I didn't turn when I heard the knock. I just clutched the mug tighter. Half empty, already cold. Felt like everything else in that house, touched once, then forgotten. The knock wasn't loud. It wasn't rushed. But it didn't belong. Not tonight. Not in this silence. Not in this house that still smelled like him. Like his aftershave. His old wool sweaters. That lemon-scented balm he'd rub on his hands when they cracked in the winter. I didn't move. The clock ticked behind me, too loud in a room that had stopped making noise. Even the air had weight. That thick, unmoving grief that hangs over everything like a wet blanket you can't shake off. The mug was warm once. I remember pouring the tea. But time slips when you're not really in your body anymore. Maybe you know what I mean. Maybe you've sat in a chair after losing someone and just drifted. Eyes open. Lights on. But everything inside you feels like it's moving through water. If you've ever sat in silence after someone's gone, you might understand this. He'd only been gone 3 days. And somehow it already felt like 100 years and 5 minutes at the same time. People came and went. Neighbors dropped off casseroles like cheese could fill the hole in my chest. Family lingered too long or not long enough. Even my own son didn't quite know what to do with me. He left this morning. Said he needed some time. I nodded like I understood. Maybe I did. But then the house was just mine. Mine and the ghosts of everything we'd shared. His old slippers by the door. The dent in the couch cushion where he always sat. The dent in my heart where his voice used to echo. And now this knock. Soft. Steady. Not insistent, not apologetic. Just there. I didn't ask who it was. I didn't want to know. Because knowing meant pulling myself back into the world. It meant remembering how to speak. How to stand. How to be polite. And I didn't want to be polite. I wanted to disappear into the mug in my hands. Into the cushion beneath me. Into the ache in my spine that came from sleeping on the left side of the bed, even though he wasn't there anymore. But the knock came again. Just once. And something in me shifted. Not because I was ready. Not because I cared. But because sometimes it's the knocks you don't expect that change everything. So I stood. Slowly. Like grief had turned my bones to stone. And I walked to the door. Not knowing that on the other side was someone who would remind me that even after everything is gone, something else might still find you. Not to replace what was lost, but to awaken what you thought had died with it. If you've ever been that person, just sitting there, numb, waiting for the world to make sense again, then maybe, just maybe, this story is for you. This is Passionate Tales Unfold. And tonight, something happened I never saw coming. The house was dim. Every shadow knew him. Knew the way he moved through the hall at night. Knew the way his laugh used to echo off the kitchen tile. Knew how his footsteps landed differently when he was tired or when he was hiding something. The couch still held his shape, even after the hospice bed was wheeled out. Even after they stripped the sheets and carried him away on a quiet stretcher. That couch remembered. It dipped slightly in the same place his body once rested. And for a second, God, just a second, I almost imagined I'd see him sitting there again. Remote in hand. Legs crossed like always. Looking up at me with that half smile, like he'd been waiting for me to say something. But there was no sound. Not even the TV hum. Just the clock. Tick, tick, tick. I hadn't changed out of the funeral dress. It was wrinkled now, stretched in places where I'd curled up on the armrest last night. Still smelled like stale perfume and old roses. I hadn't brushed my hair. Hadn't washed the eyeliner from under my eyes. Didn't care. Didn't want to care. The afternoon light spilled across the floor in slices, warm, golden, indifferent. Cutting through half-used tissues scattered near the armchair. Shining on a plate of untouched food someone had kindly left and I had kindly ignored. The candle I lit this morning still flickered. Vanilla and smoke. A soft kind of ache in the air. Everything was still. Too still. The wind pushed gently against the windows like it was trying to get in. Or trying to take me with it. And I I just stood there. I could hear my breathing, low and slow, like I was trying not to break the silence by existing too loudly. You'd think grief would stab, that it'd hit like a truck, that it'd knock the wind out of you and leave you gasping on the floor. But no, grief is quieter than that. It's soft, like water soaking in. You don't even feel it at first, but it fills every empty space inside of you until there's nothing left untouched. I looked around. The blanket folded on the back of the couch, we always fought over it. Now it just sat there, neatly, like it was waiting for a guest that wouldn't come. The coasters we never used. The stack of magazines he swore he'd read someday. His old slippers still by the door, one turned slightly, like he'd just kicked it off. Like he was still here. But he wasn't. He was ashes now. In a polished box I refused to open, sitting quietly on the mantel beside a wilted bouquet. Everything in this house had a memory attached to it. A smell, a song, a fight, a laugh. And now, all those things were mine alone. Just mine. Heavy in my chest. Lodged somewhere between missing him and trying to remember how to breathe without him. I walked slowly, barefoot across the hardwood floor. The boards creaked the way they always did, like the house was whispering his name. I paused in the kitchen doorway. There were 2 mugs by the sink, his and mine. Still stained from the last time we had coffee together, just days before he went quiet for good. He couldn't swallow anymore near the end. I still poured him a cup anyway. Habit, maybe? Hope, maybe? I ran my fingers along the counter. Cold marble. Solid. Unchanged. Unlike everything else. The tea in my mug had gone lukewarm now. Tasted like nothing. I drank it anyway. I sat down again. Same spot. Same cushion that still held the shape of a man I loved, and sometimes didn't. Because love's messy like that. Sometimes you miss the parts that hurt. Sometimes you remember the warmth and forget the nights you turned your back in bed. Grief has a way of making even the worst memories feel sacred. Holy. Off limits. I didn't cry. I'd already done enough of that. At least for today. Instead, I just stared at the door. That door where the knock came from. That knock I still hadn't answered. It had only been minutes, but it felt like hours. And something in me, something I didn't want to name yet, was telling me to get up. Not because I was ready. Not because I wanted to open that door and face whoever or whatever was on the other side, but because silence like this, it's the kind that doesn't stay empty for long. It's the kind that gets filled, whether you want it to or not. By a voice, a memory, a moment, or a man you never expected. There was another knock. Softer this time, like the person on the other side wasn't sure they should be there. And then, his voice. It's me, Tyler. I froze. Furrowed my brow before the name really sank in. Tyler. My son's friend. College roommate. That quiet one with the kind eyes and the messy hair who always called me ma'am even when I asked him not to. He was the polite one. The one who always offered to carry the groceries in without being asked. The one who lingered at the dinner table a little longer than the others, asking questions like he actually wanted to hear the answers. The one who once helped my husband lift the old lawnmower into the back of the truck, barely 19 and still trying to prove he had strength in him. That Tyler. Not a boy anymore. But still too young to be standing at my front door. Not tonight. Not like this. I didn't answer right away. Didn't know if I could. My feet felt cemented to the floor. My fingers gripped the fabric of my dress like it might help me make sense of the moment. Why him? Why now? And why did my chest ache in this particular way? Not like grief. No. Grief was a dull pressure, like being slowly pressed into the ground. This was different. Lighter, but sharper. A flicker. A breath held a little too long. I stepped forward. Slowly. The hardwood floor creaked under me. Each step sounded louder than it should have, like the house was warning me, or inviting me. When I finally opened the door, there he was. Tyler. standing awkwardly, shoulders tense, eyes uncertain. He held a small bouquet of lilies in his hands, cheap grocery store ones, the kind someone grabs last minute when they don't know what else to bring. The plastic wrap still on. No card. His hair was a little longer than the last time I'd seen him. He wore a navy sweater, slightly oversized, sleeves pushed up to his elbows like he'd been pacing before he knocked. His eyes darted up to mine and then down again, as if looking at me too long might make something happen he couldn't take back. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. That's what he said. 6 words. Plain, gentle, careful. I looked at him. Really looked. And there was a long silence. The kind that stretched between us like a thread, thin, fragile, humming with something neither of us could name. I should have said something normal. Thank you. Or it's okay. Or I appreciate that. But I didn't. Instead, I stepped back. Just enough. Just wide enough. Come in. My voice didn't sound like mine. It was quieter. Breathier. Like it had to sneak past everything caught in my throat. He stepped inside, careful with his shoes, like he was afraid to leave marks on the floor. The lilies rustled in his hands. He didn't know where to set them. Neither of us knew what to do next. I closed the door behind him. The click echoed in the hallway. I led him to the living room without looking back. My body remembered how to move through the space, but my mind was somewhere else. Spinning, grasping. Why him? It had been months since I last saw him. He'd visited over the summer, brought my son home after finals. I remembered he hugged me longer than the others did, that he held my gaze when no one else knew where to look, that he offered to stay and help with dinner when my husband had already gone upstairs to rest. And now here he was. After the funeral. After the casseroles. After everyone else had moved on or chosen to stay away. Why now? I sat back on the couch that still held too many memories. He followed. Careful again. Choosing the armchair across from me like it was safer that way. He set the flowers down on the table, beside the untouched food. Then folded his hands. Rubbed his palms together. Nervous. I wasn't sure if I should come, he said. His voice still soft. But I kept thinking about you. About everything. I nodded, slowly. Not because I understood, but because part of me didn't want him to stop. He looked around the room. Took in the mess. The silence. The candles still flickering. The small details that most people would have missed. And I saw it, just for a second, in the way his gaze settled on me. That he saw me. Not the widow. Not the grieving mother. Not the woman dressed in wrinkled black with tired eyes. Me. And that did something. Unlatched something quiet and old and hidden. Why does my chest ache differently? Because no one else had looked at me like that. Not since before the illness. Not since before I lost my name in the caretaking and the calendar reminders and the sleepless nights spent listening for breath that came slower and slower. Not since before I forgot what it felt like to be seen by a man as something other than broken. And now this boy, no man, was sitting across from me. And for a moment, the grief thinned. Not disappeared, but softened. Like it was stepping aside, just for a breath, to let something else exist. Curiosity. Warmth. An ache I hadn't felt in years. Not lust, not yet. Not desire, not fully. But the precursor to both. That tender flicker that lives just beneath the surface when you realize someone notices you. Not politely, but intentionally. He didn't speak again. Didn't try to fill the silence. Just looked at me like I mattered. Like I wasn't invisible in this grief-drenched room. And suddenly I wasn't sure what this moment was. Only that it didn't feel wrong. It felt suspended. Like the air around us was waiting. And deep in my chest, some small, dangerous part of me wanted to see where that thread would pull if I didn't let go. There was another knock. Softer this time, like the person on the other side wasn't sure they should be there. And then, his voice. It's me, Tyler. I froze. Furrowed my brow before the name really sank in. Tyler. My son's friend. College roommate. That quiet one with the kind eyes and the messy hair who always called me ma'am even when I asked him not to. He was the polite one. The one who always offered to carry the groceries in without being asked. The one who lingered at the dinner table a little longer than the others, asking questions like he actually wanted to hear the answers. The one who once helped my husband lift the old lawnmower into the back of the truck, barely 19 and still trying to prove he had strength in him. That Tyler. Not a boy anymore, but still too young to be standing at my front door. Not tonight. Not like this. I didn't answer right away. Didn't know if I could. My feet felt cemented to the floor. My fingers gripped the fabric of my dress like it might help me make sense of the moment. Why him? Why now? And why did my chest ache in this particular way? Not like grief. No. Grief was a dull pressure, like being slowly pressed into the ground. This was different. Lighter, but sharper. A flicker. A breath held a little too long. I stepped forward. Slowly. The hardwood floor creaked under me. Each step sounded louder than it should have, like the house was warning me, or inviting me. When I finally opened the door, there he was. Tyler. Standing awkwardly. Shoulders tense. Eyes uncertain. He held a small bouquet of lilies in his hands, cheap grocery store ones, the kind someone grabs last minute when they don't know what else to bring. The plastic wrap still on. No card. His hair was a little longer than the last time I'd seen him. He wore a navy sweater, slightly oversized, sleeves pushed up to his elbows like he'd been pacing before he knocked. His eyes darted up to mine and then down again, as if looking at me too long might make something happen he couldn't take back. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. That's what he said. 6 words. Plain. Gentle. Careful. I looked at him. Really looked. And there was a long silence. The kind that stretched between us like a thread, thin, fragile, humming with something neither of us could name. I should have said something normal. Thank you. Or it's okay. Or I appreciate that. But I didn't. Instead, I stepped back. Just enough. Just wide enough. Come in. My voice didn't sound like mine. It was quieter. Breathier. Like it had to sneak past everything caught in my throat. He stepped inside, careful with his shoes, like he was afraid to leave marks on the floor. The lilies rustled in his hands. He didn't know where to set them. Neither of us knew what to do next. I closed the door behind him. The click echoed in the hallway. I led him to the living room without looking back. My body remembered how to move through the space, but my mind was somewhere else. Spinning. Grasping. Why him? It had been months since I last saw him. He'd visited over the summer, brought my son home after finals. I remembered he hugged me longer than the others did, that he held my gaze when no one else knew where to look, that he offered to stay and help with dinner when my husband had already gone upstairs to rest. And now here he was. After the funeral. After the casseroles. After everyone else had moved on or chosen to stay away. Why now? I sat back on the couch that still held too many memories. He followed. Careful again. Choosing the armchair across from me like it was safer that way. He set the flowers down on the table, beside the untouched food. Then folded his hands. Rubbed his palms together. Nervous. I wasn't sure if I should come, he said. His voice still soft. But I kept thinking about you. About everything. I nodded, slowly. Not because I understood, but because part of me didn't want him to stop. He looked around the room. Took in the mess. The silence. The candle still flickering. The small details that most people would have missed. And I saw it, just for a second, in the way his gaze settled on me. That he saw me. Not the widow. Not the grieving mother. Not the woman dressed in wrinkled black with tired eyes. Me. And that did something. Unlatched something quiet and old and hidden. Why does my chest ache differently? Because no one else had looked at me like that. Not since before the illness. Not since before I lost my name in the caretaking and the calendar reminders and the sleepless nights spent listening for breath that came slower and slower. Not since before I forgot what it felt like to be seen by a man as something other than broken. And now this boy, no man, was sitting across from me. And for a moment, the grief thinned. Not disappeared, but softened. Like it was stepping aside, just for a breath, to let something else exist. Curiosity. Warmth. An ache I hadn't felt in years. Not lust, not yet. Not desire, not fully. But the precursor to both. That tender flicker that lives just beneath the surface when you realize someone notices you. Not politely, but intentionally. He didn't speak again. Didn't try to fill the silence. Just looked at me like I mattered. Like I wasn't invisible in this grief-drenched room. And suddenly I wasn't sure what this moment was. Only that it didn't feel wrong. It felt suspended. Like the air around us was waiting. And deep in my chest, some small, dangerous part of me wanted to see where that thread would pull if I didn't let go. I led him into the living room, the one room I hadn't touched since the hospice bed was removed. It still smelled faintly of antiseptic and old candles, like time had stalled here. Like the walls themselves remembered too much. My bare feet crossed the cold wood, then softened into the old beige carpet, the one we kept saying we'd replace. It held so many quiet memories, flattened spots where the wheels of the bed had sat, a faint indent near the armchair where I used to sleep sitting up, just to be close enough if he called out in the middle of the night. There was a kind of hush in that room. Like everything had paused, respectfully. Tyler followed me in. Not close. Not too far behind either. Just there, present, like he understood the rules of an invisible game we were suddenly playing. He sat down on the edge of the couch. Not where my husband used to sit. He chose the other end. Polite. Careful. Like he didn't want to disturb something sacred. But his presence filled the room anyway. He sat like he didn't want to take up space. But he did. His frame, long and lean, folded slightly inward. Hands clasped. Knees angled just slightly toward me. He looked at his shoes at first, like even his own presence startled him a bit. And I watched him. My eyes wandered in places I didn't mean to let them go. Noticing things I had no right to notice. The tension in his jaw. The slight movement of his throat when he swallowed. The way his fingertips fidgeted over the seam of his jeans. I caught myself breathing differently. Slower. Deeper. Like I needed more air to be around him. I turned away before it became too much. Went to the little table by the kitchen archway. Pulled out 2 mugs. The kettle had long gone cold, but I reheated what I'd boiled earlier. A soft hum. Steam slowly building. Why am I making tea? It was instinct, I think. A gesture. A delay. A way to keep my hands from shaking. I poured 2 cups. One for him. One for me. The scent of chamomile drifted up like a memory I didn't ask for. When I turned back, he was looking around the room again. Not nosy. Just observant. Like he was trying to absorb the weight of this space. I placed the tray on the table between us. He leaned forward. I did too. Our hands brushed as we reached for the mugs. Just barely. Not even a second. But it was enough. Enough to feel that tiny spark. That static charge that jumps skin to skin when 2 people are almost something, but not yet. Enough to make my breath hitch. I didn't pull away. Neither did he. But we didn't speak about it either. The air just shifted. He murmured a quiet thank you, eyes still cast low. And I sat, facing him, holding my mug but not drinking, letting the warmth seep into my palms, letting it ground me. But my thoughts, they were no longer wrapped in grief. Not completely. I was present, fully here, fully with him. And that scared me, because I hadn't felt with anyone in so long. Not since long before the cancer came. Not since I started sleeping in short intervals and crying in locked bathrooms. Not since I began disappearing in the small, quiet ways only a long caregiver does. But here I was, feeling, not mourning, noticing, and it wasn't wrong. But it wasn't safe either. His cup rested lightly in his hands. He sipped slowly. I still careful, still tracing the corners of the room, never quite settling on me too long. And I wondered, did he feel it too? The shift? The breath between silence and something else? I didn't ask. Of course I didn't. But my body leaned an inch closer than necessary. And I saw his knee do the same. We didn't speak. We didn't touch again. But the space between us wasn't empty. It was waiting. You were always his favorite, I said softly. The words fell out of me like a sigh I didn't realize I'd been holding. Tyler didn't answer. Not with words, anyway. He just looked down at his tea. His fingers curled gently around the mug, knuckles pale. The kind of silence that says more than a dozen sentences ever could. I followed his gaze toward the mantel. There was a photo. One I hadn't been able to move yet. One of them together. Tyler and my husband. Standing side by side on the little dock behind our lake house, fishing poles in hand. Sun burning low behind them, turning everything soft and gold. My husband's smile. That rare, full smile, the one he never gave for the camera. It was aimed directly at Tyler. And Tyler. He wasn't looking at the camera either. He was laughing. Genuine. Young. Carefree in a way that almost hurt to remember. Tyler's eyes flicked up to it now. Just briefly. But they lingered long enough that I saw something change in his face. Grief, maybe? Guilt. Affection. Something heavier than he was used to carrying. And I watched him carry it, silently. With that same quiet grace he always had. Even back when he used to sleep over, awkward and lanky in my son's too small clothes. Polite. Sensitive. A little shy. He always had this way of being in a room without disturbing the air. But now he disturbed something. Something inside me I wasn't prepared to confront yet. His eyes dipped again. Respectful. Almost too much so. He didn't speak. Didn't ask. But his gaze. It wandered. To the side of my neck. To my collarbone where the necklace I used to wear had been removed weeks ago. To my bare finger where the ring should have been. I noticed it. The noticing. He didn't stare. He didn't leer. But he saw me, not as someone's wife. Not as someone's mother. But as someone. Me. And God. That did something to me. To be seen. Not pitted. Not hugged and passed over. Not placated or avoided. Seen. I sat a little straighter without meaning to. Felt the pull of my dress across my ribs. Felt the way my hair, pinned loosely to one side, had started to fall. A strand grazed my cheek and I didn't push it back. I let it stay. Let the softness frame my face in a way I hadn't let it in weeks. He didn't say anything about it. But I felt it. The shift. The subtle recalibration of how we existed in that room together. And beneath the quiet, something unspoken stirred. Not desire. Not yet. But possibility. He glanced back toward the photo once more. Then toward me. And I felt the weight of 1,000 questions sitting in the space between us. Questions he wouldn't ask. Questions I wouldn't answer. But they pressed into the air like fog. Dense and slow and heavy. What are you doing here, Tyler? Why me? Why now? Do you feel this too? Or is it just my loneliness pretending? He shifted slightly, his knee brushing the edge of the coffee table. A subtle sound. The clink of his spoon against the porcelain. So small, but in the quiet, it echoed. I looked down into my tea. The surface had gone still. A little cold. Like me. Or maybe like the version of me that existed before this moment. Before this boy. This man. This almost someone. Sat in my husband's living room. And didn't ask anything. But saw everything. I tucked my leg under me, slowly, shifting to face him a little more directly. He noticed. That too. But still didn't speak. Didn't move. Respectful. Still. But I could feel it building. The questions. The noticing. The ache. There was a time I feared being forgotten. Now, I feared being remembered. I took another sip, even though the tea had cooled, and let my eyes find his again. He held them. Not long, not bold, but long enough. Long enough that everything else in the room, the photos, the dim light, the thick silence, fell away, and it was just us. Two people, stuck between memory and something neither of us had dared name yet. Not mourning, not healing, just noticing, and in the noticing we had already crossed a line. One neither of us spoke aloud. But neither of us stepped back from, either. Not yet. You can go, if this feels too strange, I whispered. I was standing closer than I meant to. Too close, maybe. Reaching out for his cup with both hands like it mattered. Like I needed a reason to stand there. He didn't answer. But he didn't move either. Didn't step back. Didn't hand me the mug right away. He just looked at me. That same soft way. Like I was something fragile. But not broken. Not yet. I let my fingers wrap around the porcelain. His hand was still on it. Just briefly. And that's all it took. That brush. That half second of skin to skin. Not a touch, not really. But enough to leave heat. I felt it run up my wrist. Slow and almost shy. Like even my own nerves weren't sure how to react. And then he let go. Gently. I turned away. Not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know what to do with what was stirring inside me. Was it grief? Or did I just want to feel anything that wasn't cold? I walked toward the kitchen, mug in each hand. Footsteps slow on the hardwood like I was afraid to wake something. Behind me, I heard the shift of fabric, the small sound of him rising. I didn't turn, but I knew he was following. Not close. But not far either. In the kitchen, the light was softer, dimmer, filtered through the thin curtains. Late afternoon giving way to something duskier. I set the cups down. Didn't rinse them yet. Just let them sit there. While my fingers curled around the edge of the counter, trying to anchor myself, I could feel him behind me. Not looming. Not pressing. Just there. Like he wasn't trying to take up space. But couldn't help the way his presence filled the room. I turned around slowly. He was only a few feet away. And when our eyes met again, I didn't look away. I couldn't. There was something in his face. A quiet. A patience. An offering, even if he didn't know he was offering it. Not a kiss. Not a touch. Not a promise. Just this. Stillness. A place I could fall into. Without having to explain why I needed to, my body felt strange. Not aroused. Not yet. But aware. Aware of the space between us. Of the way his chest rose and fell. Slower now, matching my own breath. We were breathing in rhythm. Without even meaning to. And I could hear it. The hush of it. The shared air. I took a half step closer. To what I didn't know. The sink? The counter? Him? He didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't lean in, just watched me. And in that quiet watching, I felt more seen than I had in months. I kept my arms folded across my middle, not guarded, but holding myself together. And then, quietly, I said, "It's been so quiet in here since he left." Tyler nodded. Once, slow, and then his hand lifted just slightly, not toward me. Not yet. Just enough that I noticed. A pause. A waiting. For what? I wasn't sure. Consent? Permission? A sign that this wasn't a hallucination built out of loneliness? I don't know what my face did, but whatever it did, it was enough. Because he didn't step forward. Didn't say anything, but he stayed right there. A soft, solid presence in the warm hush of my kitchen, while the sun kept slipping away, and the air between us thickened with everything unspoken. I took another breath, and he mirrored it. Two people, standing too close, not touching, but changed. Something had shifted, not loudly, Not dramatically, but the quiet between us had a pulse now, and though I wasn't sure what would come next, I knew the silence wasn't just silence anymore. It was an invitation. Unspoken, ungiven. But there, and neither of us had walked away. Not yet. I looked up, and his eyes, they weren't just seeing me. They were holding me. I don't know how else to explain it. Like his gaze had weight. Not heavy, just enough to make me feel tethered. Like I might float away otherwise. Like maybe I already had. And then, so gently I almost missed it, his hand reached out and landed lightly on my arm. Not a grip, not pulling, just grounding. His palm was warm, steady. His thumb didn't move. There was no rub, no caress. Just that quiet warmth through the fabric of my sleeve. Like he wanted me to know. You're not drifting. I see you. You're here. And I broke. Not loud, not sobbing. Just a single breath that cracked in the middle. A sound I hadn't meant to make. I thought I'd always feel alone, I whispered. My voice barely there. I hadn't even realized I was thinking it until it left my lips. But it was true. I'd been carrying that truth like an ache in my bones. Tyler didn't speak right away. He let the silence hold it. Like he respected how raw it was. Then he said, quietly, but with no hesitation. You're not. His voice was deeper than usual. Soft, but certain. And then, not tonight. I didn't say anything, didn't have the words. But I leaned in. And he let me. His other hand came up slowly, settling between my shoulder blades. A soft anchor. No pull. No pressure. And I folded into him. Not because I wanted to seduce. Not because I was chasing something forbidden. But because my body needed to rest. Somewhere. And in that moment, he was that somewhere. My face found the curve of his shoulder. The fabric of his shirt was warm from him, smelling faintly of cedar and soap. Not cologne. Not effort. Just him. He didn't shift. Didn't rock or sway. He just held me. Still. Present. Alive. And I exhaled. I hadn't realized I'd been holding my breath for weeks. Maybe months. Maybe longer than that. But in that stillness, with my cheek resting over the steady rise and fall of his chest, my body remembered how to breathe again. We didn't speak. Didn't move. Didn't even blink, I think. There was no music. No poetic line to fill the silence. Just two people. In a kitchen. With grief curling around their ankles. And warmth rising up through their ribs. I don't know how long we stood like that. Long enough for the shadows to shift. For the golden dusk to start turning blue. There was a moment. Just one. Where I thought he might tilt his head. Might brush a kiss near my temple. Or maybe even lift my chin. But he didn't. And that's what made it real. The restraint. The choice not to move further. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And somehow, that made it more intimate than anything else could have. His breath warmed the top of my head. Mine slowed against his chest. And in that place, between ache and comfort, I felt something shift inside me. Not lust. Not yet. Just the faint, stirring relief. Of being seen. Of being held. Without being asked to be anything more than what I already was. A woman grieving. A woman alive. A woman who hadn't been touched. Not really touched. In what felt like forever. And now, here was this boy. No. This man. Not taking. Not asking. Just giving me something I hadn't realized I needed. A moment of stillness. That didn't feel empty. A breath. That didn't feel borrowed. And the simple grace of not having to hold myself up anymore. I didn't remember moving. Not from the kitchen. Not from that quiet place where his arms held me like a thought too gentle to speak. All I remember is the warmth. That creeping, steady kind. That slips beneath your skin and settles there. Deep. Still. Patient. We were on the couch. Side by side. facing nothing, really. Just the mantle. The flicker of the one candle I'd forgotten to blow out. The faint outline of the room we'd both entered as different people. I leaned into him. Not because I meant to, but because my body made the choice. Before my mind could interfere. His arm didn't tighten. He didn't shift or draw me closer. He just let me rest there. Against him. Like I belonged. And when my hand slipped over his, just resting gently on top, no fingers laced, no grip. He let it be. No response. No pressure. Just skin on skin. In the softest way. Like a question I hadn't asked aloud. And an answer he gave without needing words. The room was dim now. That kind of velvet dark that holds its breath. The candle threw shadows across the floor, making the silence feel full instead of hollow. And then, so carefully, it almost felt like memory instead of motion, he lifted his hand, reached up, and brushed a strand of hair from my face. Not tucked, not swept, just moved it, like it had been bothering him to see it there. Like he wanted to see me clearly. His knuckles grazed my cheek. Barely, but it was enough. Enough to make me close my eyes. Not from shame. Not from fear. But because it felt safe to. The silence wasn't sharp anymore. It wasn't the kind that cuts. It was soft now, like a blanket you forgot you owned. His touch didn't ask anything of me. It didn't lead or suggest. It simply was. And I thought to myself, somewhere behind the slowing rhythm of my breath, his body didn't feel like a stranger. Not like it should have. Not like I might have expected. It felt like quiet understanding, like something I could rest against, without needing to explain why I needed it. The couch creaked softly when I shifted closer. But he didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. Just let me settle. Our shoulders brushed. Our knees too. And still, no movement. No chase. No push. Just presence. The flicker of the firelight danced along the edges of the photo frames. The one of Tyler and my husband was still there. Still smiling. Still casting its shadow. But it didn't sting in that moment. It just was. Another part of the room. Another memory that didn't need to leave. To make space for this one. And maybe that was the thing. This moment wasn't about replacing him. It wasn't about erasing anything. Or filling the space he left behind. It was about letting my heart be seen. Exactly as it was. Fractured. Tired. And still beating. Still wanting warmth. Still wanting to be touched in ways that didn't take, but offered. The world outside had gone quiet. No wind. No ticking. No reminders of time. And in here, with Tyler's hand beneath mine, and the soft, sacred hush between us, the world held its breath. And so did I. Grief doesn't ask for permission. Neither does comfort. They just arrive. Sometimes in the same breath. Sometimes in the same body. And sometimes in the form of a boy you once saw in your kitchen, raiding your fridge, laughing with your son. Now standing taller, quieter, and somehow more still than the air around him. I used to think mourning was a single thing, a season you lived through, a cold you had to catch, and then let burn out. But it's not like that. It doesn't move in straight lines. It curls itself around your ribs, lays low behind your eyes, and tucks itself beneath your skin in places no one else can see. And yet, tonight, in a room I hadn't stepped foot in without my husband in months, I felt something else. Not instead of grief, but alongside it. Warmth. Presence. The quiet grace of someone who didn't try to fix it. Just stayed. My husband. He wouldn't have wanted me to stay broken. I know that. Even if I couldn't say it out loud before now. He would have hated the thought of me sitting at the kitchen table. Alone. Every night. Until the silence devoured my voice. I think he would have wanted me to feel something again. Even if it hurt. even if it didn't make sense. Tyler rose from the couch when I finally stood. No words, just that kind of understanding you don't often get from someone that young. He walked with me to the hallway. Slow, like each step mattered. And we stopped, right at the edge of my bedroom door. He didn't ask, didn't linger, just waited. A beat passed, and then another. And he looked at me. Not like he was asking for anything. Just seeing all of me. The tired, the softness, the ache that hadn't found a name until now. And he said it so simply, like it carried all the weight in the world. Good night. Not casual, not distant, just full. And then he turned, walked down the hallway. Not fast, not slow. Just enough for me to notice that I didn't want the space between us to stretch too far. I stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame, the wood cool beneath my fingertips, and I watched him go, past the photos, past the rooms that still whispered my husband's name. Watched until the front door opened, and that evening air slipped in again, carrying the scent of something unfinished. I didn't cry. Not then. I just whispered, soft enough that only the doorway heard it. Thank you. Not because he fixed anything. Not because something happened that couldn't be taken back. But because he reminded me, in that quiet, sacred hour, that I wasn't invisible, that comfort could come. Without warning. Without shame. Without needing to be anything more than what it was. And sometimes, that's enough. Maybe more than enough. Some nights, we break. Shatter into pieces we didn't know we still carried. And other nights, we begin again. Not with loud declarations. Not with fireworks or sudden epiphanies. But in the quiet. In the small spaces where hope still lingers. Like a faint breath between two heartbeats. This night was both a breaking and a beginning. As the room darkened around me, the shadows folding back into their corners, I let myself sit with that feeling. The ache, the comfort, the fragile thread of something new weaving through the silence. Maybe it's not about having all the answers. Maybe it's about holding the questions softly and letting them rest beside you. I want to ask you, what did you feel in that moment, sitting there with him? Did it remind you of something unspoken in your own life? A secret longing, a hidden wound, or the gentle weight of being seen when you thought you were invisible? If this story moved you, please leave a comment. Share your own quiet moments of healing, or the times you're still trying, still reaching for that elusive comfort. Because here, in Passionate Tales Unfold, the stories we don't dare speak out loud finally find their voice. And maybe, just maybe, that voice can help us all feel a little less alone. Thank you for being here, for listening, for feeling. Until next time.